Welcome to another edition of Tackle Talk Live. That's right, you've tuned in to the best fishing show on the air as we speak. And I'm sitting here, and I'm Ranger Daiwa Pro Staffer Steve Graff, along with Mr. Toledo Bend, fresh off his big win at Toledo Bend, Kevin Jean with an 18-pound plus stringer. Hey, man. I'm jealous.
Hey, I'll take it this weekend.
I'm jealous.
1895. It was right at 19.
That's okay.
We rounded
That's okay.
19. Steve.
Yeah, well, go ahead and round it up to 20 then. But anyway, we've got a great show today, guys. We've got a special guest. We're starting part one of a series of tournaments or a series of shows with the Conroe Gang. And probably a lot of people hadn't referred to them as the Conroe Gang, but you got the Hemphill Gang, which was Tommy Martin,
Harold Allen, Larry Nixon,
John Torian, and John Hale.
John Hall.
John Hall, excuse me. Those were the guys off of the Hemphill Gang. Well, today's gang, the Conroe Gang, is Zell Rowland, Gary Klein, and Rick Klein. And today we've got Gary Klein going to be joining us here in just a few minutes.
Yeah, Steve, I'm like you. I'm real interested in hearing the Conroe Gang. You know, I've heard and we went through all the episodes of the Hemphill Gang, and we kind of knew somewhat about that. Conroe Gang's a little bit smaller, of course, and it's been kept a little bit more low key.
Right.
So I'm really anxious to hear Gary's perspective, how it got started with those three. Were they guides?
Yep.
I know, of course, we all know they were tournament fishing, but interesting story to say the least.
And next week we'll have Zell Rowland on. Zell's going to come on, tremendous topwater angler. When you think topwater, you think of Zell Rowland. He's probably one of the premier topwater guys in professional fishing. So we'll have Zell next week. And we'll work on Rick Klein, see if we can get him. It depends on what their schedule is, and he's a little harder to track down. But real quick, Kevin's going to tell us about our main sponsor.
The Boat Shop. Mr. Raymond Kidd and his staff take great pride in keeping your boat and motor performing at its best. A certified Yamaha dealer and home of the best motor on the market, the Yamaha Show. Looking for a great aluminum boat, they now carry CR. So stop by 2410 Sanford Avenue in Shreveport and let the Boat Shop take care of all your boating needs.
Hang on, Gary.
You can give them a call at 318-402-0399 or on their website at shreveportboatshop.com.
And on the phone with us right now, live from home, Gary, is that right?
Yes, it is. Out here in the middle of nowhere.
And that's you're probably not used to being home this time of year, are you?
No, this is really one of our busiest times. You know, usually we're starting to head up north, and we're usually back to back. But now everything's sitting idle right now, so just a lot of time on our hands to fish all the local lakes. And of course, you know, turkey season opened up on the 4th of April, and so we've been out trying to chase a couple birds.
Oh, and you're a West Texas guy, correct?
That is correct, yes, out towards Abilene.
Well, I've actually done a little bird hunting myself. Me and a friend of mine are big, used to be big quail hunters until it just got to where it wasn't worth going out there, Gary, and doing a lot of bird hunting. There just wasn't enough birds out there. But now I think it's been a little bit of a resurgence with quail. Am I correct?
Yes, especially further west of where I am. The quail hunting's been pretty good. I know it was last year.
Well, we used to hunt around Post and all the way from Throckmorton, Graham, all down through that region. Seymour, we've been out there some. And but like I said, it just got to where it was such, slim pickings. It just wasn't worth making the trip. But hopefully, now, do you have a lot of quail in your place?
No, I do not have one bird on my place.
Really?
Yeah, that's really weird because, we've acquired the property over, the last 30 years. And when we first had property out here, we were just full of quail. And I never hunted them, just a lot of birds, and they just went away.
Fire ants?
Yeah, we did. Fire ants, we blame everything on fire ants.
Exactly. They can decimate a quail population pretty quick. But anyway.
They've done it out here.
Mr. Gary, it's Kevin Jean, V&M Bates. How are you?
Good.
Hey, Mr. Gary, so we want to really dive into, of course, your history today and how it got started for you guys, and just kind of set the table here for you. So last couple of weeks, we've had parts of the Hemphill Gang on, Mr. Tommy Martin, Harold Allen, Larry Nixon, and, kind of from when they started back in their day, when they started guiding around Toledo Bend and got their tournament start. And, we was talking to Mr. Zell Rowland off air, and he was telling us about the Conroe Gang and you three down there. And, we just basically want to kind of get some history, a little history lesson here and on you and when you got started.
Well, I tell you, part of that Hemp Hill Gang, too, was John Dean, John Torian. Those are a couple names.
John Hall.
John Hall, yeah.
Bo
Yeah,
Dowden.
John Hall was one of them, yeah. And, of course, Robert Hall, his brother. But, I mean, it was really kind of cool for me. And, I'm a transplant. I'm originally from California. I left California in 1979 to come out and fish the BASS circuit. And back then, there was only 6 events during the course of the season. And my first year on the circuit, I had actually met Randy Fite. And that is Rick Klein's stepbrother. And through Randy, I was introduced to Rick Klein. And, of course, Rick lived there in Montgomery, Alabama. And Randy Fite lived there in actually on Lake Conroe.
Mm-hmm.
And, some years forward, I actually made a move from California to Texas in 1986, and actually in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. My wife and I were married in New Year's Eve on 88, and then our first house that we bought together, we bought it on Lake Conroe.
Mm.
And that's when everybody started, that was back in the early 90s, and that's when they started coming up with the Hemp Hill Gang, the Conroe Gang, and I know part of the group there in Conroe was myself and Randy Fite, Rick Klein, and Mike Dias, who is the actual investor in Stanley Jigs. He had a house there on Conroe.
Yes.
And it was kind of cool because every time we had a major event somewhere, all of us would leave town together and trailer together. So
Now, Zell Rowland was a part of that too, right?
Oh, yeah, excuse me. Yeah, in Zell.
Yeah.
Of course, we called Zell the master of disaster because if any tragedy was going to happen or mishap, it would always happen to Zell.
Well, there's always that one guy that's in that category. I know in our family, we have that one person we don't want to travel with them because if anything bad's going to happen, it's going to happen when they're with you.
Well, you couldn't really travel with Zell. We would all leave together, and Zell would usually be late. And back then, we all had CBs. And out of the middle of nowhere, here would come Zell passing us all going down the highway. And then about 20 miles ahead of us, we'd go by him, but he was pulled over getting a traffic ticket. That happened to Zell all of the time.
Well, on the phone with us, we've got Gary Klein, and Gary is a 2-time AOY Angler of the Year in 1989 and 1993. Also, 2003 Classic runner-up. And I guess where we kind of want to start, what year did you decide to turn pro? When did professional bass fishing strike a chord with you and say, hey, this is what I want to do?
Well, I was very fortunate. I was introduced to it at a very young age, living in Northern California. I was actually a sophomore in high school. And I was like any other young teenager growing up. I loved to hunt and fish. Had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I just knew that I wanted to get involved in something that I really enjoyed. And I was just loved the outdoors. And it was, I believe, the late spring of 73 when I was working a summer job that I had at Bidwell Canyon Marina. I observed my very first competitive bass fishing tournament. And, of course, I was like a kid in a candy store. I hung out with all the guys for a couple of weeks there. And D. Thomas won that event. And it was a $25 entry fee. And first place was $500. And, when you're 15 and a half years old making $1.65 an hour, that $500 was
That's big money.
check.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not only that, too, but the way your mind works when you're 15, it's like, man, I'm as good as all these guys. I can catch fish as good as they can. So, I'm going to win everything I ever fish. Yeah, if I fished a tournament every week, and I can make a couple grand a month.
Yeah.
Of course, since then, I've learned that this sport's very humbling.
Yeah.
No matter who you are, how good you think you are, how well you think you have the fish figured out, it always changes.
Yep.
And but that was my first introduction to competitive angling at the age of 15. And I knew then that's exactly what I wanted to do. And I lived it. I breathed it. I fished everything I could. I bought my first bass boat when I was 16 years old. Bought my second bass boat when I was 18. I was still living with my parents, making, I think I got a raise of like $2.10 an hour. Graduated high school in 75 and continued to live with my parents. But I fished everything on the West Coast. And back then we had several organizations like Western Bass. And I was fishing about 20 events a year and working at Bidwell Canyon Marina. But it was in 1979, actually, in 78, when I made the decision that I needed to come out and fish on the BASS circuit. And I was raised by D. Thomas, and D. Thomas was the angler that won that first event that I observed. I introduced myself to him, and for some reason, he just took a liking to me. And I was kind of like the son that he never had. He actually had 3 daughters. So I fished with D about every other weekend down on the Delta and a lot of the lakes in Northern California. But what D taught me was how to flip with a long rod. And back in 1978-79, it had never been introduced to the BASS anglers. So the Rick Cluns and the Roland Martins and the Jimmy Houstons and the Bill Dance never knew how to flip. And I'll never forget the reason why I left. As another friend of mine that I met was quite a bit older than me. He's now retired, but he was in the Air Force. He's a lieutenant major in the Air Force. He sat me down at his kitchen table and said, Gary, he said, you need to go back. And he said, the reason why I say you need to go back is because you can flip better than anybody. You're broke. You're living with your parents. You're not making enough money to pay your income or your bills. So he said, what's the worst thing that can happen to you if you go back and try to fish the BASS circuit? He said you would go broke. So he just told me that it would be better to live life trying instead of live life always wondering. So that right there was kind of the key decision for me. I saved up enough money to prepay 2 BASS tournament entry fees of $250 a piece. And I left California with a personal loan from a bank of $1,000 cash. And that's what I started my career with. First tournament was on the St. Johns River in 1979 in Florida. And that's all I did was flip. I carried 7 flip sticks with me. It was the only thing I had. And I spent all 3 days of practice looking for a flip bite. And I ended up 10th in my first BASS tournament, won $1,100. So I figured I was even. But then the second BASS event was back out on Lake Powell. And that was a lake that I had fished previous multiple times. I understood the lake. And I ended up winning my second BASS event on Lake Powell. And that was kind of my foot in the door. I knew I qualified for the Classic, so now all I had to do was just fish. And it was a fun year for me. But I've never looked back, never had another occupation but a competitive angler.
Now, Mr. Gary, when did you move to Texas?
In 1986.
Okay. So you had started on tour, then you moved to Texas?
That is correct. Yes, I was a road warrior. I'd leave Northern California and drive to wherever the BASS tournaments were, and then fish the event, and then drive back.
Well, Gary, back in those days, which you're in my time period, I graduated in 79, and so I was just getting into high school when you were graduating.
Yeah.
I'm from Texas, Mount Pleasant, Texas, Lake Monticello, cut my teeth there. And how was your parents in terms of support? Because bass fishing at that time was just like something you do for fun. How supportive were your parents?
Well, it was my mother that co-signed that personal loan for me of $1,000. And I deferred my first payment, deferred it for 3 months, and it was a $93 a month payment. But also, there was only 6 BASS events to fish. So I was fishing the 6 BASS tournaments. And then there was another circuit here in Texas, Louisiana called Ford Dealers for Bass. And I got involved in those. It was a $500 entry fee, but first place was your choice of a Ford vehicle. Second place was a fully rigged Skeeter Starfire with a Mercury on it. And we fished lakes like Lake Darbo, Falls River, Toledo Bend, Xfl Basin. So I was really fishing an awful lot, just not the BASS circuit. And I think my first year on the BASS circuit, I won about $34,000 fishing Western bass, Ford Dealers for Bass, and BASS. So I've always been one of those anglers that I save everything.
Yeah.
And so I rat holed a lot of stuff, and I've always been pretty much self-supporting of my tournament career.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Gary, why Lake Conroe? Is it somebody there? I mean, if you're moving to Texas to live here and to tournament bass fish, and Conroe's a good lake, don't get me wrong, but
why not Rayburn or Toledo?
You're passing Fork, you're passing Rayburn, you're passing Toledo. Why Lake Conroe? Is it something in that area that brought you to town?
Well, what I liked about it is that, of course, we went down and we looked at houses, and we found a really nice house that was a real good deal for us. But it was also close to Klein, and by, it was kind of the group.
Yeah.
And Conroe was a great lake back then. I used to fish it a lot with Randy Fight. I fished it a couple days with Rick Klein, but believe it or not, we lived on Lake Conroe for 3 years, and during those 3 years, I don't think I fished that lake more than about 3 times.
Wow.
I just never fished Conroe. Because we're always traveling, fishing other lakes, and
right.
I spent more time on Conroe towing my sister-in-laws around in inner tubes than I did actually fishing.
Well, one of the things you do, let's back up just a little bit here. One of the things you talked about was the group you kind of ran with, like little band of gypsies between you and Klein and Zell and Fight. And so of those guys, the buddy system's really popular, and the good old boy network is in full swing on these Bass Pro Tours.
On most of them, other than Major League Fishing, which you cannot.
Well, still, I think they have a deadline where they can't talk to each other, but once they get to the lake, I know they can't talk. But how was it working with those other guys? Did y'all help each other out? If somebody was in the lead and say, okay, Zell's in the lead, we got to try to make sure he tries to win this thing. Did y'all work together or?
Well, I don't want to say that there was any set schedule of, let's have a meeting and let's discuss. For the most part, guys like Klein and myself are pretty much individuals. And the whole thing about competitive angling, there's so much to learn. And once you get past the fundamentals of fishing, which is the basic stuff that should take an angler no more than about 3 years to learn, which is rods, reels, lines, lures, knots, hooks, boats, trolling motors, electronics. The other part of the learning, which is continuous, is the development of an angler himself. Because that's always been one of the cool things about the sport of competitive angling, is that there's no right way, there's no wrong way to do anything. It should be your way. And one thing that I've learned through my career is that no two anglers read the water the same way. I fish different than everybody else, but I have to fish my strengths, not my weaknesses. And one thing that I learned at a very early age is that I was never successful chasing somebody else's fish or chasing somebody else's information. And Rick Klein and I were probably the closest out of that group as far as talking. And Rick Klein and I never really talked too much about fishing. We would always talk about our individual personalities, et cetera, et cetera. Now, don't get me wrong. There were times when Klein would have a question for me, or I would have a question for Klein. We were both very respectful of each other, and we also knew that we were individuals, and we also knew that we both fished different. I didn't fish like Ricky, and Ricky didn't fish like me. But, there would be some times when at the end of 3 days of practice, I'll use an example. Ricky and I used to room together an awful lot. In 1988 on Bull Shoals, it was a fall event. I was rooming with Ricky. Bull Shoals is a man-made reservoir. It's deep and clear. I had a technique. It was light line with a spinning rod, a 6-pound test line, and nobody on the BASS circuit had ever been introduced to it. And the ones that saw me fishing a spinning rod with 6-pound test line just called it sissy fishing. Well, we went to Bull Shoals. It was in the fall. The lake was about 20 foot below full pool, and the water was gin clear. at the end of the first day of practice, when I got back to the room and Ricky and I were eating dinner, Ricky just kind of asked me, he said, well, how was your day of practice? And I looked at him, I said, Ricky, it was so easy. And he looked at me and said, what do you mean easy? And I said, I probably had 50, 60 bites. And he basically called BS on me. He'd only had one bite all day.
Wow.
So the next day, I really got dialed in on the pattern. And that night when we came in, he asked me that same question. I said, Ricky, I'll win this event if I don't beat myself. And I did. I went on to win that event. But the fish were all in 35 to 60 foot of water. And I was catching them on a little 4-inch doodle worm with a spinning rod. And nobody knew how to fish like that. And case in point, I didn't lead it the first day. The angler that led it had a 12-pound stringer, or a 14-pound stringer, caught him on a jig and spoon. But I was, at the end of the event, I was the only angler that weighed a limit all 3 days, and I was probably catching 30 to 60 keeper bass a day.
Yeah.
So then Ricky started understanding the importance of being versatile.
Right.
And I was just using my California upbringing and my light line experience, which just made me that much more versatile. So, I mean, it was a fun relationship because Ricky taught me a lot about, shallow water, aggressive fishing. Of course, I was raised with Dee. Dee was really good at it. Rich Foreham, my friend in California, taught me everything about light line fishing. So it was always a fun combination. But no, I never really wanted to hear too much about what Zell was doing or Rick Klein was doing.
Right.
But for example, you had talked to Zell. My first angler of the year in 1989, on the final event of the year on Lake Murray, North Carolina, I was fishing against the whole BASS field for Angler of the Year. And back then it was by total weight. Going into that event, I had like a 60-pound lead over, I think, Denny Brower for getting Angler of the Year. Well, I didn't catch him very good the first day, and Denny caught a big bag. And I didn't catch him very good the second day, and Denny caught a big bag. Well, Zale came to me, and we had a conversation. He said, look, because I felt I only need to catch 10 or 12 pounds, and I would have, won Angler of the Year. Well, Zell gave me a pop R bite, and he told me exactly what to look for. I didn't ask him where to go, but I took that information and caught a good bag on the third day with a pop R, and I won Angler of the Year.
Right.
Wow.
So, I owe that to Zale.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so information like that every now and then. I could tell you 100 stories where a little tidbit like that, just came back. For example, the BASS Classic that Klein won, the first one that he won on the Arkansas River out of Pine Bluff. I'll make a long story short, but going into the final day of competition, Ricky came to me. I knew exactly where he was fishing. I knew the bait that he was throwing. He's catching on a little 6A shad-colored bomber. And Ricky came to me that night and said, Gary, those fish, I'm catching them, but I just feel like they're getting used to seeing the same lure. What other lure do you think that I could use to catch those same fish? And I looked right at him and I said, Ricky, throw a Shad Rap. So Ricky tied on a number 5 Shad Rap and smoked him the third day at the Bassmasters Classic.
Yeah.
So that information, Ricky already found those fish.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just little tidbits that we're able to share with one another that kind of keys them in.
Exactly. And the second U.S. Open that Ricky won on Lake Mead, Ricky caught him good the first day. Ricky caught him good the second day. But he could tell that his bite was going away. And back then it was a 4-day event. And Ricky still managed to catch him good the third day, but he felt like his fish were gone. And because you can only burn a spinnerbait around bushes in one bay and get away with it for so long.
Right.
So Ricky came to me. We had a conversation, and there was some water in the lower end of the lake that I had not fished yet, but I fished it in practice on vertical walls, on cracks on vertical walls. And I told Ricky, take this jig head, take these purple worms, and just fire them into the shade pocket and slack line and let them sink. Well, Ricky did that, and won his first U.S. Open
Yeah.
on Lake Mead with that information. So a lot of that went back and forth, and it was fun to be a part of that group. And I think you asked me that question earlier. Does that still exist today in tournament competition? I'll tell you, yes, it does.
Yeah.
The one thing that I did with Major League Fishing, as most of your listeners know, that I was a co-founder of it, and the Major League Fishing format was something that had been in my head for quite a few years. And Boyd Duckett and I created Major League Fishing. Well, what I tried to do with Major League Fishing is create the purest form of competition where it's truly one-on-one. There's no sharing of waypoints. There's no sharing of any information. And what that does is the MLF anglers now are challenged to get better. They're challenged to practice all the time. And all I did with Major League Fishing is address all of the issues that I didn't like with conventional tournament fishing.
Right.
And you're talking to somebody that has been raised with conventional tournament fishing. I mean, 2 angler of the years, I've qualified for 30 Bassmasters Classics, yada, yada, yada. But one of the things that I didn't like about fishing conventional tournament styles is that I felt that as a competitive angler and somebody that was actively involved in the fishing industry, so my schedule has always been very hectic, I didn't have a lot of time to pre-fish. I didn't have time to search out a network of information of people that lived on these lakes. I felt, like other anglers did also, that every time we launched our boats, I felt I was at least a day and a half behind at least 50% of the field on current conditions, the techniques that were really, working very, very well. So in Major League Fishing, I just shut all that off to where all of our anglers compete on their own.
You're at a level playing field when you get there.
Exactly. I mean, we talk, we have a good time and all that bit. We talk fishing all the time. We just can't talk. Now, MLF anglers can talk about that venue, that body of water, time of year, type of lake, and current conditions and what they may think is going to happen.
Right.
But all that gets shut off at midnight going into the first day of practice.
Well, Mr. Gary, before we jump into MLF, because we've got some questions there on you, I want to go back. You have about one of the best bios there is with BASS before you went to MLF. I mean, right at $2.7 million in winnings over 40 years, 10 major career wins. I mean, we can just keep going on and on. But the one that has eluded you has been the Bassmaster Classic. In 2003, right here in the Louisiana Delta, you was the Classic runner-up. That's the year Ike Nelly won it. Take us through that Classic a little bit for you, because I know it was a whirlwind. And that was, I think I remember watching it and hearing some of your conversations. You felt like you kind of let that one get away from you.
Well, not that particular Classic. Out of my 30 Classics, I've had 3 Bassmasters Classics won. I mean, I've had them won, but I've just had little hiccups that cost me the victory. The 2003 Classic out of Bayou Sinette, out of New Orleans, was a Classic that I thought in my heart I had won until Ike Nelly weighed in. But Ike Nelly beat me in that Classic fair and square. I fished that event 100%. Every bite I got, I boated.
Right.
So I left nothing on the table. So, and Ike Nelly beat me on his last cast. Yeah. He was leaving the little pond.
If he wouldn't have caught that on the last cast, Mr. Gary, would you have won?
Yes.
I couldn't remember the weight difference it was.
It was a good fish he caught.
Oh yeah, it was.
Well, he caught a 3-pounder.
Yeah,
which is huge down there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he caught a 3-pounder, and I had another great bag. I had like 13 pounds or 12 and a half pounds or whatever. And Ike Nelly just happened to be fishing down there by me too. I was.
Did you hear him? Did you hear him when he caught it?
Yeah, and I've always
the Superdome heard him. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Well, yeah, I mean, but hey, he beat me fair and square.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
I didn't lose the fish. I didn't break anything off. And, that obviously was his victory. And, of course, that just left me more determined to, qualify for the Classic and win that event. And, of course, I will never win the Bassmasters Classic because I
Right.
don't fish BASS anymore.
Right.
Correct.
I guess I can say that I hold the record. I took that record away from Roland Martin. And, Roland Martin was that angler that had qualified for 25 Bassmasters Classic and had never won one.
Right.
And I broke that with 30. But
What was the other classics, Mr. Gary, that you thought you had won?
Well, I had them won. And I may get the years a little bit backed up on you here, but it was the Bassmasters Classic that we had on Lake Chickamauga. I believe it was 87, 88 in that era. The final day of the Bassmasters Classic, I was in the top 10. I was catching them every day, and I was saving a little stretch of water way in the upper end of the lake below the other dam for the final day. And I ran up there. They didn't start generating until 12:30, and I had basically 100 yards of grass to flip. And I ran up there, and I had one 12-incher in a live well. I told my press observer, between here and there, I'll win the Classic. And I caught a 3.5, put it in the box, caught a 5, put it in the box, and I get real close to the very end of the stretch, and I get bit again. And fish is about a 4 3/4 pounder. When I hit it with my flip stick on 25-pound Test XT, I broke a clutch in my prototype Zebco Quantum level line reel. And when I broke the clutch on the hook set, my reel fluffed and I couldn't turn the handle on the reel. But I had enough on the hook set, I pulled the fish up on top of a mat of grass. And that image is just instilled in my brain, and the fish is laying there. And I can't pull. I reach out and I grab the line with my hand, and it just flopped, and my hook came out. And the point of the hook was not even through the plastic.
Oh.
Yeah.
And I watched that fish swim back down. And, of course, on the run back in, I threw an ear on the prop. Rick Klein picked me up, brought me into the weigh-in. And I ended up 4th in that event. I missed it by a pound and 11 ounces.
Did Clem won that one?
No, Klein did not win that one. That was won, I believe, by,
Klein picked him up.
I want to say Charlie Reed.
Oh,
okay. Yeah. 80. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that may have been the one that he won. The second one that I had it was mine, was when it was the second time we came back to the Arkansas River out of Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Remember, we fished it 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
And maybe this was the second time. I don't know. I don't remember if Ricky won it the first time, or if maybe it was Charlie Reed that won it, or Charlie, I forget his last name. Remember, he caught him on a do-nothing Carolina rig one. And that kind of spurred on the Carolina rig technique. But the first day of the event, I had Steve Price, my press guy. I found some fish in the back waters of Brody Bend, had them all to myself. Ran up there the first day, idled through all the stumps, got up there, and I went about 100 yards down my stretch, had 18 pounds of fish in the live well, and turned the boat around and came back out. And he goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "Dude, I'm going to win the Classic right here. I mean, nobody's going to beat me. Nobody's in here." So I left at about 9 o'clock that morning to come back out. I was catching on a buzzbait. Came to weigh in, and it started raining that afternoon, and it rained buckets of rain all night. When I went back to that water the next day, it was just red mud. But what I didn't know is in the back of that little oxbow that I was fishing was an irrigation pump. And they opened up that pump because of all the flooding, and it flooded out that. That was my second Bassmasters Classic, that when I walked away from that, I just thought, dang, that was mine.
Yeah.
I had it won hands down. And, of course, you take a look at the 2003 at New Orleans. I could use that as an excuse saying, yeah, that would have been mine. But, I never had that fish on, so I couldn't legitimately say that was my Classic.
Right.
So,
Right.
There's a bunch of them over the years that you look back and you always say, what if? I always looked at myself thinking, okay, how can I become a better angler? And it shouldn't get down to that one fish.
Right.
You should
Right.
be able to win by more. But, that's also the other thing that I've always enjoyed about this sport is that as a competitive angler and somebody that's got, competitive nature, is you get out of this sport what you put into it.
Yeah.
And even today, the amount of study that goes into every venue that we go to is phenomenal. And that's the other thing that, of course, with MLF is that an angler, because of our 3 periods, our 2.5 hour periods, you're forced to make decisions quick.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have what I call being complacent, where in a conventional tournament, you could go out, pull up on a spot, catch 5 that weigh 18 pounds, and figure I'm good. I'll be in the top 5 at the end of the day, and you can spend the rest of your day just looking for a big bite,
Right.
as we say.
Real quick.
Well, in Major League Fishing, you can't be complacent. You got to catch them from lines in to lines out.
Right. Real quick, Gary, we're going to get into MLF real quick. First, I want to recognize the boat shop. Stop by 2410 Sanford Avenue in Shreveport. Let the boat shop take care of all your needs. Give them a call, 318-402-0399, or go to shreveportboatshop.com to learn more. On the phone with us, we've got Gary Klein, 40-year professional angler, one of the legends of the sport. We're tickled to death to have Gary on with us. And Gary, we're going to switch into MLF real quick. One of the things that MLF has done is you've created a whole new dynamic to tournament bass fishing, a whole new realm, a whole new way of measuring a guy's fish catching abilities. Any idea on when MLF will restart this tournament season? Is there any idea when y'all got a target date in mind as to when you're thinking about kicking this thing back off again?
Well, we are like the rest of the country. Everybody's on hold.
Right.
And, until we start seeing something starting to ease up, we still continue to be on hold. Our team has been working overtime trying to figure out how we're going to be able to finish out the 2020 season. We've got all of our plans in place, but we don't know. We're hoping that the country is, we're kind of going again in June.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know that. And not only are we have our MLS schedule, but as most of your listeners know, that we also we have ownership of FLW.
Right.
They're 2 completely different business models, but yet we own them both. And the purchase or the acquisition of FLW is just part of our bigger picture plan that we have. And let me just go back to the beginning. Where we are today with Major League Fishing, and I tell this story all the time, is because of a conversation that Boyd Duckett and I were having in a parking lot, spool and line on at the Bassmasters Classic. And I think it was in Shreveport in 2009. And it was just 2 guys talking about what if. How could we elevate? How could we make it bigger than what it is? How could we take it? Because I always felt, and it seemed like the more I fished, the more I was believing this, is that the sport had kind of leveled off. It was owned by, a third party that's a business, and don't get me wrong, we're a business too. But yet the sport, I didn't think the sport was being developed. So our intentions back then are the same as our intentions are today. What we have tried to do and what we continue to do is create a league out of the sport and the passion that anglers have for competitive angling. And there we created Major League Fishing. We created a format that was TV orientated, the most intense competitive format that an angler will ever compete under. But the other challenge that we had is we had to get it in front of more eyeballs. We had to get it outside of our, as Bass would say, our 500,000 membership. We had to get it on a larger platform. And back then, Bass was doing a pretty good job, but it was, ESPN, but it was still the same.
Right.
We weren't getting the numbers. What we did with Major League Fishing is Boyd and I knew that when we created Major League Fishing, that in order for us to really achieve our ultimate goals, we would have to partner with a media platform that could help us. So we partnered with Stan Kroenke at Kroenke Sports, which is the whole OC group. They're in Denver, Colorado, and they've been a phenomenal business partner with us. And they've allowed us to continue to not only create this competitive format, and they air it on all their platforms, but they've also allowed us to go to CBS, Discovery. I mean, we have the highest rated sports programming ever on Discovery. And Discovery has 93.5 million households. And they've only been airing competitions for 3 years. So we're airing all of our Major League Fishing pro events, our Bass Pro Tour events on Discovery, and then we later re-air them on the Outdoor Channel and Sportsman Channel. So we have this huge media platform that has really, really helped us. And of course, we learned a lot in 2019. When we came out of the gates in 2020, our first 3 stages we're steamrolling it. I mean, we addressed all the issues that we thought we had in 2019.
I love the change to the 2-pound rule. I felt like it really helped.
Yeah.
It makes it, in my opinion, better to watch with the 2-pound rule, and a little bit more exciting. And you are right, Mr. Gary. I mean, this format puts you on the edge, especially somebody for like myself and the companies that have, for instance, Jacob. Jacob being on my pro staff, I'm constantly needing him to win and wanting him to win. And a couple events him and Cliff has won. It's just intense at the end. We're wanting them to win. You just don't know what's going to happen, especially the one in North Carolina that Jacob won last year. It come down between him and Wheeler, and it was just set on the edge of your seat, till it was over with, and you can finally relax that he won. But it is intense.
They're all nail biters.
Right.
That's one of the things that we did with our format, is because of our coverage is so extensive, and we've amped this competition up, that there's so many storylines that our cameras chase, through the elimination round, through the groups, into the knockout round, into the championship. So what we tried to do when I created the format is one thing that I wanted to do, unlike conventional tournament fishing, is I wanted to make it so that when an angler launches his boat and he competes, every scoreable bass means something.
Right.
But here's what a lot of the listeners don't understand, or haven't taken the time to go to MajorLeagueFishing.com and learn, is that Major League Fishing is different. And Major League Fishing, we have our 8 stages that we fish. During those 8 stages, not only is an angler in, let's say you go to stage 1, you're in Group A in elimination round. Not only are you trying to qualify for the knockout round, but then when you get the knockout round, you're trying to qualify into the championship round. At that particular stage also, you're not only trying to qualify to advance, but you're also trying to qualify into the Major League Fishing Cups.
Right.
Which is 4 more events. And then when you're at a cup, you're trying to qualify into the World's Championship. And then, of course, this year on the schedule, we threw another ringer in there, is we called it our heavy hitters. And our heavy hitters was an event that had the 2020 season played out the way it was supposed to play out. At the end of stage 5, all 80 anglers record their largest fish caught from each of the previous 5 stages, and that gave them their 5-fish stringer. The top 30 anglers with their largest 5-fish stringer would have qualified for the heavy hitters. The heavy hitters was scheduled for the 3rd week in May on Lake Toho. And what we were going to do different with heavy hitters that has never been done before is it's a $745,000 payout. The elimination anglers, the groups, Group A, Group B, the angler that caught the largest single fish, we were going to use a 1-pound minimum. But the largest single fish caught during the elimination round would get a bonus check for $25,000.
Yeah.
Paid to each group. And then when we went to the knockout round, the scoreable minimum was going to go to 2 pounds. And the angler that caught the largest fish during the knockout round would get a bonus check for $50,000. The championship round, the scoreable went to a 3-pound minimum, and the angler that caught the largest fish on championship day was $100,000 bonus. So we were paying back $200,000 in bonus money for the largest fish caught, and then paying the other $45,000 back to the 30 anglers as they place out.
Yeah. Yeah, but the one thing I think y'all have got to figure out, MLF, really is 2 things. Number one, in what you just described, and I've sat down and I've studied MLF, and I'm very familiar with it because I've taken the time to do that. I understand the knockout rounds and how to advance. The majority of the anglers out there are very confused with Major League Fishing and the different stages that y'all go through in each event. I think it's something, I don't know how to clear that up for people. And when you try to explain it to them like you just did with us, it's very confusing. And well,
I really feel that this 2020 season,
yeah,
we have a really good handle on that. And the confusion that you're talking about is something that we were very, very aware of, and how that confusion, I want to say, I guess maybe got created, or how it existed was simply by this, is that Major League Fishing is evolving. Okay.
Right.
So we, as a company, as we develop this league, we are evolving. So there's a lot of stuff that is evolving with us. And the main thing that's evolving is the fact that we are a TV created competition. So everything that we do on the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour side is built around our production and our air dates for Discovery Channel.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay? Right.
Well, as we evolved into the 2019 season, because what we do with the cups is that we film and then we air the following season. And that's where a lot of this confusion started, because we had, in the beginning we had 2 cups a year. Actually, we filmed 1. And then that really went good, so we created 2. We did that for a couple of years, and then we expanded from 24 anglers to 48 anglers, and we created what we called the selects. And then the selects would air, the cups would air, and people started getting confused there. Well, in 2019, when we started the Major League Fishing Bass Pro Tour, we were still airing some of our select events from the previous year.
Right, right.
So that's where the confusion started coming in. But now those have all been aired, those have all been played out. And our 2020 season is a clean slate moving forward.
Right.
So now everything comes out of the Bass Pro Tour. So basically the point I'm making is that it's becoming easier and easier to understand and follow the concept now.
Right. Gary, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. We've learned a lot, not just about MLF, but about you and your career. And man, we're big fans of Gary Klein. We're big fans of MLF, and we just want to say thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you, and best of luck the rest of the year. Once this thing kicks back off, I know you'll be full tilt and trying to catch them and put them in the boat again.
Well, I tell you, man, I really appreciated 2 things before we get off the air that I would like to say to your listeners is that I am just an angler like everybody else. I just have a passion for fishing. And even when I'm not competing, I'm still fishing. I actually went crappie fishing 2 days ago. So
there you go.
I just love to fish, but I'm also an educator, and I love to give anglers information that they can take and make themselves become a better angler through knowledge. And the other thing that I wanted to say before I get off, this Wednesday morning, 9 o'clock Central Time, you can go to MajorLeagueFishing.com. I'm doing a live Facebook with a fisheries biologist, Stephen Barton, and we're going to talk about aquatic vegetation. And we have all of our samples. We're going to talk about the aquatic, how it grows, where it grows. And then I'm also going to explain how we catch fish in and around all the aquatic vegetation and the tools that we use to catch them. So it's going to be an hour-long Facebook, Wednesday morning on the 15th at 9 o'clock Central Time.
Well, I hope we learn how to get rid of salvinia.
Yeah, get the beetle. I guess that beetle works really good.
Well, that's what we've heard, but Louisiana's trying that, but I think they need a bunch of beetles right now. But anyway.
Mr. Gary, we sure appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Thank you very much. Look forward to it, and just give me a holler anytime. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Gary.
MLF co-founder Gary Klein has been with us on this edition of Tackle Talk Live, and we appreciate Gary taking time.
I didn't know he was from California.
I knew he originally was, but I didn't know he
that.
started his fishing career that young in California. And, you know, there's a lot of those California guys that have just made their way to the East Coast.
It's hard to stay living in California. I mean, can you imagine the drives? I mean, everything basically is Texas east for all the pro circuits. Can you imagine having to make that drive back and forth?
But I'm talking about just from a great fisherman standpoint. How many great anglers have come out of California? And they brought the drop shotting and all the finesse tackle fishing came from those guys. And
and I'm glad you brought up the point you did about MLF being hard to carry. I enjoy watching Major League Fishing.
I do too.
I do. I enjoy watching it on TV. For us hardcore guys, tournament guys that follow this every day and live and it's just they've got a lot going on over there. You got Group A, you got Group B. Who's going today? Who's going tomorrow? Well, you can qualify for this, the cup. You can qualify for this. It's just
you got the heavy hitters now. It's just so confusing. And I didn't want to be rude, but I'm like, Mr. Gary, y'all have got to simplify this thing because it's just hard to follow. And I'm just like, I want it to be successful. We need it to be successful. And it's got an avenue that we need.
It does. They've got a good thing going with forming the league and how they're doing it. And I have to keep up because, like I said, I have Cliff and Jacob on my pro staff that I have to keep up with, and it's hard for me.
Oh, I'm sure.
So I can't imagine how hard it is for others to even know what they're qualifying for.
And we're in that realm. We're in that world.
Right.
Me and you fish BFLs, Costas, and other things, other major events with FLW, and so we have a general knowledge and understanding of what tournament fishing is, but man, I'm telling you right now, you need a Bachelor of Science degree to figure this thing out.
You have to have a map set out in front of you every time you watch it to know, well, if they finish top 20 today, they're going to qualify for this, or if they can make it to tomorrow, they're going to get a check and might make it here. And
whereas with BASS, and we'll use Daryl Gleason for an example, he fished all the opens. If he wins one of those because he fished all of them, he goes to Classic.
Correct.
Pretty simple.
If he's top 5 in points, you make the elite.
Yeah, if an Elite Series guy wins an event, he's automatically in the Classic. So it's cut and dry, simple.
And when you go to their website, you've got the Bass Pro Tour on this side, and then you got the Cup Series of information.
Right.
On their social media, they're talking about Cup Series stuff that happened.
Yeah.
On one day you might see Polnick's not there anymore, but just say Van Dam on TV competing in New York, but the next day on live he's in Alabama. It's just a lot. I enjoy it. I enjoy watching it, but there's a lot going on.
How old are they? Some of the stuff you're still on TV, I'm like, well, man, that's last year, and it is confusing. I'm sorry. It's really just hard to follow, but
I enjoy having Mr. Gary on, though. He tells it like it is. And
we didn't get to the question I really wanted to ask him about why they're not appealing to the millennials, that 18 to 35 age bracket. I would like to know what their thought process is to reel those guys in, so to speak. No pun intended, but they've got to figure out how to hook those younger anglers into their format, because every poll, every survey I've seen, that's not not what they want to watch.
Well, and I'm almost out of that realm. I'm 35 or be 35 in June, and I can just tell you, it goes back to there's just too much going on.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree.
Like you said, BAS, this is just so simple to follow, and it's traditional. It's what we're used to.
Right.
You know, and I don't know. We need the format. We need it to have success. It's just going to see but they're making a lot of changes, like the 2-pound rule. That helped. They're making the changes they need to make. Just hopefully they continue to keep making those changes.
And the thing about MLF too, they got deep pockets.
Oh,
they got the right people
got the
in
TV
place
money.
I just found out today the XFL is no more.
Right.
They've disbanded the league. Well, think about all those teams that were playing in XFL, all those players that were given opportunities to maybe be able to showcase their talent to get that opportunity in the NFL. Now that's all gone after one season. I'm just like, man, that's got to be tough. But I don't think this is going to be MLF. I don't think that's going to happen with them.
No, it's not. They have a 3-year TV contract. You know, when they first started,
and they got a good game plan.
They do. They're doing a great job. And like I said, they're making changes as they go, which is I think speaks a lot for them to saying, "Oh, we were wrong here. Let's change it."
Yeah,
that's a positive. So if they can keep moving that direction and making the changes they need to make, they're going to make it. No doubt about that.
Toledo Bend, you caught 18, 19 pounds this past weekend, Kevin. We don't need GPS coordinates, but what's the secret right now? I fish shallow. You end up going deep. The shallow bite for me was small, and there wasn't enough quality to do anything.
Well, I got fortunate and caught one almost 8 pounds. Is all that was. But Toledo right now it's got fish in all 3 stages.
Right.
You still got a few that are pre-spawn that haven't done their deal yet. I think we've got another spawn to go maybe mid-April, end of April.
Right.
You've got some, of course, still on the bed, and you've got some post-spawn. I got fortunate, found a couple on some points going into some main pockets that was holding about 12 to 15 foot of water around some stumps and stuff, and caught a good one and some other nice ones, but. Shad spawn is starting a little bit at Toledo. It's fixing to be game on with the shad spawn.
It was until this week's cold.
Yeah,
it's fixing to really put a damper on that shad spawn. It's going to pull them out. Could kill the shad spawn completely.
Possibly. It's that water temp didn't drop that much. Now we've had 3-4 straight days of low 50-degree. Outside temperatures. It's just according to how much that water temp's going to fall.
I talked to a local Saturday when I was fishing, and my water temp was 68 degrees where I was at. And he said 3 days earlier, it was 73 degrees.
Right.
So it dropped 5 degrees or more. In now that we've got some temperatures in the 40s for 3 nights in a row, low 40s, upper 30s. I really think it's going to pull the brim back out.
Oh, no,
it's
going
to push some fish back out a little bit. It's going to delay some things that, maybe a week from now, maybe it's back to normal again.
Right. Yeah, this week it's going to kind of knock them in the head a little bit this week. But I agree. I mean, when it comes back, I think when the shad do finally come and do their deal and the bluegill, it's going to be a lot coming at one time. We're going to have a lot of stuff going on.
Well, to help you get ready for the shad spawn, me and Kevin have put together a list of 5 baits apiece that we think are good quality shad spawn fishing baits that you need to have tied on. Kevin?
Well, my 5, number 1, of course, is spinnerbait. I think everybody has a spinnerbait tied on during the shad spawn. Jerkbait, a yellow magic, small popper type top water, an underspin with a small swim bait on it.
Right.
And those are my 4. My 5th one that has really became last year was my favorite, and it's of course a V&M bait. It's called our Flash Jig. It is a underspin jig with a skirt. It's underspin swim jig basically that you can put a swim bait trailer on. It really, really works. So you are including the underspin along with the skirt part, of a swim jig that just really, really shows a lot off that's going on during that shad spawn. So it is by far my favorite. But again, you can't discount a regular spinnerbait or jerkbait or top water. Those things are working anywhere in the country.
Yeah, my 5. The first one being underspin. I know Owner makes one, and there's another popular one out there on the underspins.
Lazy Man.
Lazy Man is the other one, and putting a paddle tail, small paddle tail, 3-inch on there. Imitate the shad will be small this time of year. Bandit 100 series, a pearl blackback, any type of Shad color in Bandit 100 series is really hard to beat. Spinner baits is my third one with small blades. It's another good combination. Small Spro Aruca shad. They've got 3 or 4 different sizes in that Aruca shad, and the smallest one, like the 1/4 ounce, is the one you probably need to be throwing right now. That's the one I caught some fish on Toledo. I've caught them on Sibley Lake out here in the last week or two, and they're on that bait right now. Also, for top water, that Yellow Magic is really hard to beat. It's just the small Popar Yellow Magic. It's a Popar imitation, but it's got a completely different sound chamber in it, and it's a tremendous shad spawn, early top water bite. That bite may only last 30 minutes for you on any given day. So have whatever you're going to throw, tie it on when you get there, because when it's over and that sun pops up, that's over.
Absolutely. You got to be ready to rock and roll. Get on the lake as soon as you can, because it's not going to last long, especially on those sunny days. If clouds stick around, it's going to last a little bit longer. Not much longer, maybe 45 minutes to an hour with a cloudy day. But when that sun pops out, you can forget it. It's over with.
And once again, we want to thank the Boat Shop for all their support of our program. And we also want to let you know that stay tuned, because Tackle Talk Live Tip of the Week is coming up right after this. And so if you want to continue to be a better angler, continue to watch Tackle Talk Live. Here's this week's Tackle Talk Tip of the Week. I'm Ranger Diver Pro Staffer Steve Graff, and I want to introduce you to a product that I've been using now for several years that is really convenient. I really like them. It's a product that makes it easier to hold a trailer hook in place on your spinner baits. A lot of times guys will use trailer hooks on their spinner baits for that short, take care of those little short strikes on your spinner bait. Simply take the trailer hook, add it to the hook itself. You take this cartridge made by Bait Buttons. It's loaded with probably 25 to 30 of the little clips that are in here. You simply slide it on, pull it away. It adds it to your hook, keeps that trailer from coming off. Great product, Bait Buttons. You can find these at your local tackle store. You can go online, baitbuttons.com, Tackle Warehouse, Tackle Addict. Any one of the bait and tackle stores in your region probably carries this product. They also you can buy these refill packs to add to the cartridges as well. So once again, Bait Buttons. Use them, you'll love them. It'll help keep your trailer hooks in place on all your spinner baits. It's this week's Tackle Talk Tip of the Week.